Hey there. So I wanted to talk about some technical drawing stuff. This is Tim Ellis. You might have watched some of my other videos, and what I wanted to talk about today is doing a large charcoal portrait. So one of my sons really likes Tom Holland and the whole Spider-Man series, and I did this portrait for him and wanted to talk about how to approach doing a large drawing from a small photo. So this can be really complicated, but I want to show you some easy ways to make this work. When you're doing this, one of the things that's tricky is, are you going to grid this out? How are you going to grid it? What size are your grids going to be? How are you going to transfer that grid to a larger image? And all that kind of stuff. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do. So I have a portrait here of Tom Holland from this that I've done in my advanced drawing and painting class, and I'll show you right now. So this is the drawing. I'm actually still working on this, but you can see it is this scaled up. And the way I've approached this is I have gridded this out, and I want to show you kind of a simple way to make this all come together. So if you look at what I've got here, this photo actually has a border on it. And when you're printing it out, you really want to print a borderless photo. And there's a couple ways that you can make your photo borderless. Once you print it out, you can literally cut this off, and I'll explain why you'd want to do that before we scale this up. Or you can print all the way to the edges when you're printing. And there's an easy setting on your printer where you can just say print borderless. That's just another way to do that. So I brought this home to show you guys how to do this, and I didn't realize that I had not done that. So I'm going to show you both ways to do this, where I've trimmed it off and where I have not, just because it's easier if you've just got an 8.5 by 11 size piece of paper and use that as your standard, because then you can make a matrix to scale this up and do a large portrait whenever you want. So for this portrait, the drawing is exactly 2 times as wide and 2 times as tall as the original print. And I did print it all the way to the edge for my actual student lesson. So let me see if I can grab that real quick. So here's what I've got here. This is a full-size piece of paper. And what you've got to do if you want to double this is you need to make sure that your paper is at least twice as wide and twice as tall as your existing image. Now, when I gridded this out, I know it's hard to see these lines, but they're here. Can you see my finger moving across here? This is exactly twice as wide and twice as tall as this image. And I've gone ahead and put this grid in here so that I know exactly how big this is going to be. So I'm going to explain how to use this in a little bit, but I'm actually going to recreate this grid after I trim this off. So I'm going to trim this one down, and what you can glean from that is that you can do this with any sized image. So as long as your paper is at least twice as wide and twice as tall, you could do it with something much smaller, you know, whatever size your image is. I'm just grabbing this. Is this a Pokemon card? Well, whatever it is. Even if you had something tiny, and if this was your blank paper, you could double something like this on a bigger piece of paper as well. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to show you tangibly how to actually do that. I'm going to go ahead and trim this down so that it's the exact size that I want it, because you don't want a white border on it. That's going to mess everything up. All right, I'll be right back. So now what we've got is our image trimmed down, and I've also got a piece of just blank white paper that's the exact same size that I've trimmed down. So ideally, print on an 8.5 by 11 size sheet of paper, have a blank 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and this will work really well for all of your drawings that you're scaling up, because you're probably going to want them about this size. But it'll work whatever size you want to scale it up to. So I'm going to show you how to do this really easily. There's a lot of ways to do it. I'm going to show you how I like to do it. So first of all, we are going to make this piece of paper what I'm going to call a matrix. The piece I just had here is a matrix. I've folded it in half, and I've used it to get my border exactly even all the way around. So the way I did this is I folded my paper in half. Let me get Tom Holland out of here. I folded it in half. I folded it in half again. Really carefully lining up my edges and folding it just to get the center. So now I've got the center on both sides all the way around. That's my first step. So let's do that on this new piece. So I got my blank piece. I actually just got a little bit of charcoal on it, but that's okay. Let's use this one. So we're going to fold it in half. When you're doing this, line up your corners super carefully. Make sure your corner is perfect. And then when you're pulling it down on the side, make sure your side is totally parallel. Kind of span your hand across here, and then you can start to fold it. I'm just going to slide this into the middle. Make sure it's perfect, so all your corners line up exactly. All right? So I recommend not folding it this way at this point. I would open it back up and fold it the other way. What we're doing is we're trying to find the center of your paper. It doesn't want to bend because I just folded it the other way, but we'll make it bend. Okay, so here we go. We're going across here. Here's my corner. I want to make sure it's perfect. That looks great. I'm lining up this side. It looks great. I'm folding it really slowly and carefully to make sure it's right in the center. All right, so that looks really great on both ways. What I'm going to do now is open it up, and we are going to draw on this and make it our matrix. So I just grabbed a big yardstick, and one of the reasons I grabbed it is so that the camera has something to focus on. And the other thing is it's going to help me draw out this cross super, super well. We're not actually going to draw on this paper. And I'm sorry that just went out of focus for a second. It should come right back in on my yardstick. All right. Cameras don't like to focus on pure white. So here we're going to go. I'm going to fold this up so that I can find my fold. So I'm pushing this edge against my fold. So I get it really, really, really perfect. It's not a bad idea before you do this to just on your edges carefully mark the center to make sure you're doing this correctly. Because if you get this off of your center, you're going to have wasted all your hard work so far. Not that we did very much though. Okay, so I'm along my edge. I can see my pen mark on both sides. I'm going to span my hand so this doesn't move, and I am going to draw my center line. This center line is to help us get our drawing in the center. Oh, and I can't believe it. My pen shifted. Oh, drat. That's okay. Hey, so all is not lost if you screw up the matrix, which I just did. I just put an arrow pointing to which fold is correct, and you can tell by just folding your paper, and that way we don't have to redo the whole thing. But you could just redo your piece of paper, but when I went back and forth with my pen, I wasn't paying super close attention because I'm trying to stay out of frame, and my pen went off the line. So if that happens, don't worry about it. We can still use this. So I'm going to go back to my other camera. Okay, so we're back in. We're going to do the horizontal side now. I've already marked the center. I folded my paper to make sure I'm right at the center, and now I'm going to go ahead and make that mark across. Instead of going back the other way, which is how I screwed it up before, if you're going to do a second pass, go the same direction. See, the problem with pens is they have a thickness to them, and it can screw up your angle because of the actual width of it. So we won't do that again. But now look what we've got. So we've now got our big X in the center. And you might be thinking, wow, that's not very helpful because these aren't going to be the same size as your paper. That's okay, because we are going to use it to make a border. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it twice the width of this and twice the height. So here's what we're going to do. We're actually going to use this, and I printed this on cardstock so it's a little bit easier to trace. I'm going to line it up, making sure I'm on the side with the arrow because I screwed that up before with my pen. I'm making sure I'm right on my lines and that it's really straight. Take your time with this because we want to make sure it's as good as you can get it. All right, that's going to be, oh, twisted it. Let's go back. Okay, there we go. So now I'm going to put my edges and I'm going to mark them on here. I'm basically outlining this paper so that I can get my borders. I'm going to do that all the way around and then I'll come right back because this part's going to be boring to watch, but I'm going to trace it here, and trace it here. Okay, so I've done it all the way around. This is my last one. Just in case you weren't following along, I'm back to my very last square here. Well, they're rectangles, and I'm marking them. The center's actually already there from the last corner, and I'm just getting the top and the bottom. The center's already here as well. So now what I've got is I've got the perimeter of the widest part of this. So now I'm just really carefully going to trace these, connect them all the way down. What I like to do is line it up at one side, making sure I'm on my board everywhere. Line it up on one side, put your finger there, and then move this back and forth till you're on your other mark. I'm on my second mark now, making sure it's equidistant the whole way down. And then I actually do this all the way to the edge. So I'm getting my borders on here. This will make sense as to why in a minute, but I'm just going to connect my borders all the way around. So I'm going to pause it, be right back. So I just want to show you what we've just done. We've created a border that's the same on both sides, the left and right, same on the top and the bottom, and it's centered. So I'm going to flip over to my other camera and explain why that matters. Here we go. All right, so the reason it matters that your borders are the same is otherwise your drawing is going to be off to one side or at the top or the bottom. Now, you might want your bottom section a little wider than your top, and you could plan that out by folding it slightly off center. But what I wanted is for this to be 2 times the width and 2 times the height of this. Now, this still might not make a lot of sense as to why this matters, but everything we measure off of here is going to be doubled here. And we can actually create this grid in half scale on this so that each half of this will be one of these larger squares. I'm going to show you what I mean. But just so you get the picture, we've now gridded this out and it's exactly double the size. The size of the actual paper doesn't matter because it just gave us a border. So we want that border. You could do this with a much larger piece of paper with a larger photo as well. Or you could make it 4 times the size or 6 times the size. We're just doubling it. And this is going to be a very nice big drawing anyway. So let me show you what I mean. So our grid is actually useless unless our image is gridded as well. And whether you're gridding this and the drawing paper to make it the same size or scaling it up like I am, you need to grid both pieces. So now we need to grid this one. So let me show you what we're going to do for that. So here's the paper that I have that's the exact same size. Now remember, ideally, they're just 8.5 by 11. I trimmed this one down because I brought one home with a border. So now what we need to do is instead of, if this was the original that I'm going to be drawing on, I don't want this to be all folded up. Now I could just fold it in half to get the center, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to fold my scrap paper. So here's what I mean. Just like we did on the big piece, we're going to fold this scrap piece and make a matrix for our little one. The reason I don't like to fold my original is because then it's going to, if this was my original, you can imagine it's going to bend up and it's not going to actually be the right size. The corners are going to be weird and it's really going to bother you when you're drawing. So trust me on that. You don't want to fold your original. Fold your crappy piece of paper and then you've got your center marks. And you might think, well, that's not helpful. That's a blank piece of paper. So now we'll transfer these measurements to here. And that's where it's going to start to get exciting. So I'm just going to trace these on here with my ruler. And that's what's next. This ruler is a little gigantic for this job, but it'll work. So I'm just going to fold it down the middle again. There's that mark. Make sure you're on your lines. There's your next mark. Now we want to get this line, these lines on here. So this is so easy. Let me just show you how I do this. I just line it up so that the top and bottom are lined up. I'm actually going to zoom in real quick on this. Okay, a little tip. On something dark, your dark pen is not going to show up. So you can use a colored pen. I'm going to use a red pen. So to transfer the grid, I just line it up, make sure that my sides are parallel, and I'm just going to extend this line up so that I can see that little line. I know it's hard to see, but it's there. So I'm going to do it on the opposite side too. So once again, I line it up, make sure it's parallel, get as close to my edge as I can where I can still make a mark. Extend that line up. I don't know if you can see my little mark. I'm going to do the same thing on the sides. For the sides, same thing. You want to line it up so you can see both edges. Make sure it's fairly parallel. You don't want this to be weird, because the whole point of this is this is your measuring system as you're scaling up for your grid. So remember, there's a lot of different ways to make a grid. This is so quick and easy, and once you've made this matrix, you can use it over and over again if you're going to use the same size paper. So now I've got my lines. Now I just connect them on here, and I will have this gridded, and it's going to start to make sense in just a second. So here we go. Let's grid them up. For this, when I've got a smaller piece, what I do is I put my pen or pencil right on the line. I bump my ruler into it, and I tilt it over until the other side is right on my line. So there I am. I'm going to come across. You can see your grid line a little better, being red. And we're going to do the same thing here. So here's the other one. My top of my drawing board's in the way here. I bump it, I tilt it until this is right on my center line. I'm actually having a hard time seeing that one. Boy, that's really hard to see. It's right here. I'm going to go over that a little bit. So I'm actually going to start on that one since it's so hard to see. It's this one. Okay, so I'm going to start up here. I'm going to bump it. I'm going to tilt it. And then I'm going to draw it. All right, so let's see what we got here. So now, this is what's so cool about this. Oh, I'm going to need to zoom back out. Give me one sec. Okay, zoomed back out. So now, this is what's important. Each one of these red rectangles corresponds exactly to this. So this, everything that's in this rectangle is going to be in this rectangle, and so on for each rectangle. Halfway, like his eye will come exactly to halfway, which will be here. By the way, I'm going to do another video where I kind of show you how to actually start this drawing. But what we've done is we made it so this is exactly double, and each one of these rectangles is going, when we double it, will be the size of this. So this distance is exactly double this distance. Just to give you the reality check in case you're skeptical. Okay, so let's do it on this side because you'll be able to see my ruler. So right now we are at just over 8 inches, and so there's our 8 inches. They're both the same, right? Which means this is going to be what? 4. So if we double 4, we get 8. So every one of these rectangles is exactly half of one of these. So it's doubled. That corresponds super well so that when you're measuring from your small image, and I teach this, and I'll be doing another video where I kind of walk you through how to get from here, from a blank piece to something like this, is you can actually measure. So let's say you wanted to know, how wide is his nose going to be? Well, it's going to be double. It's going to be 2 noses. How wide is his eye going to be? So I can measure his eye. His eye will be 2 eyes. Everything here will be exactly double here. So if I measured to, this line, it's not going to be here, it's going to be here where that line would be. And it's all going to come together really quickly. So, it's harder to look at it when you're looking at a blank page, but, his mouth would be 1, 2 right there. And that's how we will be able to do that. So if you've gridded things before, you already know what I'm talking about, but we just showed you how to make a grid that's centered and that you can use over and over again. And you know what I didn't show you how to do is actually just to transfer our matrix that's in pen and folded and kind of useless to draw on, to the big paper. And we're going to do it exactly like we did for the small paper, except we're going to do it in pencil. So I'm just going to do that next. Okay, a little bit hard to see because this is such a big piece of paper, but this is my grid. This is my blank piece of paper that I want to transfer the grid to. So just like we did with the small paper, I line up the ends, get pretty close to your edge so that your lines are nice and straight. Make sure it's perfect. And by the way, sometimes paper is not cut exactly the same size. I don't know if you can see my line sticking up here. These are the same, but I have bought paper that is supposed to be the same size, but is not, which is really frustrating. Make sure these lines are very, very straight. And a little carpenter's trick I'm going to show you on this corner is, instead of just drawing a straight line, draw a little triangle, which is called a crow's foot. There we go. And a crow's foot will tell you exactly where your line is because it's pointing to it, as opposed to a straight line, which can be slightly angled. I'm going to do it over here on this one. So same thing. I want to line it up so that it's almost at the edge. I need to make sure the papers are totally parallel. And we're going to do that the whole way around. So don't settle for okay on this. Make sure it's exactly the same, left to right, and that this gap is the same as you're transferring this measurement. Now this was the pen line that I screwed up before. I drew the arrow on the inside one. So remember I said we could still use this? So that's my line. We're still okay. I'm going to do the other two sides, and then I'll show you what I got. All right, so I've done my little marks the whole way around. Now I'm going to connect them. Now this is my drawing paper. So any inside grids like this one, make them light because you're going to want to erase those. So I made it very light. You might not even be able to see it, but it's there. I'm going to do that on the inside, and I'm going to connect all my outside lines too. So something that I didn't really explain that I did that's important, and by the way, I'm using that same technique. I'm looking at my halfway points, I'm spanning my hand, I'm making sure it's straight. By the way, if you kind of roll your pencil while you're drawing, it'll keep it sharp. So I'm just kind of rolling it between my fingers like this as I draw. So I made my center lines super light because those are going to get erased. The outside edges, I'm not going to erase. But, sorry, I know this loses focus every time I move it. But I just wanted to remind you, the reason I drew these lines all the way out to the edge is for this drawing edge, so that I can transfer this measurement to my edge here really easily. If I didn't draw them all the way to the edge, this wouldn't work. So now I'm just going to connect these side lines, these, and these, and it'll be all connected. Sorry, I lost my focus again. I'm going to do that and I'll be right back. Okay, so now this is my pen grid. Remember, we're going all the way to the edges. This is my pencil grid. Hold my pencil here so it'll focus. I kept my outside edges dark, but my inside edges are light. And now, if I put this down here, let's focus with this guy. There we go. It is now double everywhere and ready to draw. And I've got my rectangles here. I've got my rectangles here, and we've gridded it. And I feel like it's an easy way to grid it because you're just folding it to find the middle. Now you could measure it, divide it by 2, but first of all, unless you're using metric, inches are a disaster to divide by 2. If you live in Europe, you're like, of course, use the metric system. Yes, but even with metric measurements, it's hard to find, like if it's in the middle of something, it can be tricky. So folding the paper is just such an easy way to find the middle. And then you transfer the edges the way I did, and it works out super, super great. If you liked this video, stick around and I'll show you how to actually get started on your large drawing and teach some of my drawing method. Also, please subscribe and hit like if you liked it. I guess like this, I'm pointing down because that's where you can do it. And I have a lot more content if you like this. I also have beginning drawing where I can teach you from basically only being able to draw stick figures to being able to draw pretty realistically. So if you're interested in that, you can get some free lessons if you subscribe to my mailing list on my website. And the link to that is also below. All right, I'm Tim Ellis. Thanks for tuning in.